Over 80% of crypto companies fail, and part of that is to do with how they market their products. Hey guys, Ramsey here from Jello, and today we're going to be going through the fundamentals of crypto marketing to ensure that you don't end up on page 17 of CoinMarketCap in about 12 months. Today's video is for founders, marketers, and teams in the space who want to stop flailing and start building a crypto native strategy that will actually work. So let's get into it. First things first, there are a few mindset shifts that you should at least consider when marketing a crypto product, especially one with a token. And the first thing is that the token is the product itself, or I should say, is a product in itself. And it does change the way that people interact with your brand and with your core product too. Now, you should treat the token as its own product with its own strategy, and that means it has its own marketing campaigns, expectations, messaging, audience, and by nature, it has its own optics, so the price chart, it has its own demand cycles, expectations, and so on and so forth. Token price is perceived, for better or for worse, as a signal of momentum, interest, and sometimes as a proxy for success of a company. So it's important that we treat it with the respect it deserves by providing its own marketing budget, expectations, messaging, narratives, etc., and not just leave it to collect dust on a shelf on like page 54 of CoinMarketCap because we haven't marketed it. The token also brings something unique when it comes to building user bases and communities, and that is the potential to have a more aligned user base with the brand. And especially when we consider how users typically interact with other products, like in typical SaaS products or D2C products, where they kind of just consume the product. Now with tokens, there is a much higher scope for a longer term alignment, and I'll get into this slightly later in the video. The third thing is that optics matter. And again, for better or for worse, those with the best optics are privy to more opportunities. This can be social layer optics, it can even be on-chain, such as token price or TVL, but we have to make sure that we are considering how things look. For example, if someone checks your project and sees a dead chart, it's a psychological checkout before they even click join the Discord, right? No one wants to be part of something that is not seemingly moving or alive. And finally, storytelling is king. You must be able to create stories that resonate with your audience and build your brand in order to survive. So with this mindset shift kind of out the way, we can move on to the crux of the video. Now, the first fundamental idea here that we need to look at is positioning before promotion. You'd be surprised how many times teams jump into marketing without ever defining exactly what they stand for, what their position in the market might be, or what narrative they want to run. This is a huge mistake. Before you touch a single dollar of agency spend or KOL budget or whatever it might be, you need to answer these few questions. What is your story? What position do you have in this market? And what makes you unique? Right? Your positioning is not a tagline, it's a strategy that defines how people perceive you and your project. And you need to engineer that perception because ultimately, perception is reality. Right? Engineer your positioning, make sure that you are putting across how you want to be perceived and don't let the market dictate how they should perceive you. Craft stories to resonate and differentiate your brand, and test and iterate before spending. Now, when you're building your narratives, they should reinforce two things. The first is that you are the best possible solution for the problem you're trying to solve, or the best product in your category. And the second is that you are worth investing in, and the value of your company should be higher in the future than it is today. Every sort of narrative that we're trying to push should reinforce these two things because the first speaks to the actual users of your product, and the second speaks to those investing in the token. And so we need to make sure that we have these on lock and understand what narratives we need to pull to push these two things. And finally, when it comes to positioning a narrative, we need to make sure that we're testing these with smaller focus groups before pushing them with big budget campaigns. Because if we constantly push new narratives and new brand positions and we're currently pivoting without sufficient product follow-up, then we're going to lose our user and investor confidence, and that's not very good. We need to find what sticks with a smaller focus group and then amplify it. Now, just because we're talking about crypto fundamentals doesn't mean that we don't have traditional marketing fundamentals in the mix. It's always foundations first. And at Jello, we look at these three key things for our fundamental context when we look at any client, podco, or any sort of project we're looking to work with. And those three things are audience, product, and market/competitors. Now, we need to really understand the audience and the product in excruciating detail, because if you don't, then none of your marketing is going to hit, right? We need to understand the audience demographics, their pains, behaviors, motivations, desires, where do they live, how do they behave online, what other apps do they use, how do they use those apps. All these different things are really, really important because this allows us to create marketing material that will resonate with those people and feel more familiar for them, and ultimately make it easier for them to convert into our product. When it comes to product, we look at capabilities, features, benefits. So what does it do? How does it do it? And why do we need it to do that? And then map those things to the audience pain points and behaviors, so we can create like a clear map of how this product fits in with that user's world and their existing lifestyle, etc. And make it easier for them to resonate with the product and convert. And thirdly, it's looking at the market and competitors. So who are the competitors? What are their product capabilities, features, and benefits? What narratives do they run? What positionings do they take in the market? And what are the wider catalysts and trends that are also going on in the market that we can latch onto to help us kind of build steam and improve our reach in the market? And finally, looking at other future catalysts that could affect our brand and how we could utilize those to kind of, again, grapple our way to the top and help us kind of gain market share and mind share. So foundations should never be skipped. And it's really important as a brand that you do take this seriously, because if you don't, then you'll be throwing darts at a dartboard with a blindfold on, not really knowing what you're throwing, just seeing if something sticks. Community is a very big part of the crypto marketing setup at the moment. And tokens obviously have allowed this to be the case because they bring a new paradigm of alignment. So what do we mean by this? Well, typically, if you look at any sort of product or brand that you might interact with, whether it's they're selling shoes online or you're using a SaaS product, you typically have some sort of economic alignment and then maybe some cultural alignment. And what that means is, if I use a product and I get value from that product, then I have economic alignment. And if I like a brand because I like their vibe, then I have cultural alignment. Now, with the token, you have financial alignment. And obviously, when you want to play long-term games with your users, you want them to be incentivized to utilize your product and advocate for your product over a longer period of time. And this is where the token comes in. So it's very, very important that we understand community is more than just having people in a Discord, but it's having them on a level of economic, financial, and cultural alignment. Following on from that, we can probably differentiate from audiences and communities too. So audiences technically are just consumers, and communities also contributors. So we really want to make sure that they're incentivized to contribute to the growth of the product. And that doesn't mean just airdropping them tokens, but also make sure that there's strong economic, cultural alignment as well. The ideal state of all of this is looking at a community where we have inter-community value creation, inter-community knowledge sharing, and inter-community relationships. Because this is going to allow the community to flywheel itself and compound itself over time and kind of remove you from the equation. And I've got a little diagram down here so you can see when we're comparing it with the audience kind of counterpart, you have one brand that speaks to the audience and the relationship is a one-to-many relationship. But with a community, you have the brand facilitating lots of many-to-many relationships, ultimately strengthening the community and meaning that it can run even if the brand wasn't really in the picture facilitating those things on a day-to-day basis. So this is the ideal state that you want. You want lots of individual relationships happening concurrently, allowing people to kind of create value within the community and drive it forward. Now, one thing that people really forget is that traction is the best form of marketing, right? All the shiny things don't matter if there is no product usage. So there should be a really big focus on creating growth loops and strong acquisition channels and acquisition funnels with your marketing before you kind of go and splash a lot of cash. Because if you waste your marketing budget on these flashy campaigns without any follow-up or activations, then you're going to kind of be in a net negative position where you're out of budget and probably not really seeing much traction with the product. So it's really, really important that we focus on building traction before we start focusing on splashing out on big events and parties and huge airdrop campaigns. And this is just taking it back to Startup Marketing 101, which is not even marketing, it's more like BD. Make sure that the messaging is tight, it's narrow, it's resonating with that target audience, acquire those first few users, and then spin it out from there. We don't want to be spending a lot of money on flashy campaigns when there's no follow-up or nothing for that user to do, because then we will just end up losing them and they will go to the next best thing. And this is the same when it comes to airdrop campaigns as well. If you're just going to give people money to talk about your product or just use your product without existing user bases there who are really using the product and generating economic value from it, then once those incentives die down and those people find something else to go play with, then they will just move and they'll be very mercenary about it and they won't really care. And so we need to make sure that we have sufficient traction, because that's going to start our flywheel when it comes to building growth loops and attracting more users, But B, again, traction is the best marketing. Would you rather work with a DeFi protocol or use a DeFi protocol with 100 million in TVL, or 3K in TVL, but loads of people talking about it on Twitter? I know which one I'll trust because people are putting their money where their mouth is. Optics are important, as I mentioned, but traction ultimately is the best form of marketing. So, what common mistakes do we see at Jello with people we've spoken to, or clients that are looking to kind of reshape their marketing? I think there's 5 key things here. The first is that many brands skip over proper brand positioning. Right? They jump straight into pushing a message and seeing how it goes in a big way. And again, it's really important that we test these with focus groups before you push them out to make sure that there is some consensus that there is market fit for this messaging, or it makes sense. The second big mistake is that there's an over financialization of marketing in the space. And this is mainly pertaining to airdrop campaigns and the likes. If you're going to pay people to use your product, they're just going to go to the highest bidder and they're not going to stick around for the long run. Yes, there is ways that you can gamify and incentivize people's usage, but over financializing that experience is a really net negative activity and should not be done over a long period of time. The third big mistake that we see is working with misaligned influencers. So you need to make sure that the influencers that you're working with are aligned in the sense of their region, their ethics, the content that they put out, the medium that they're on, the audience that they serve. All these things are really, really important before you work with influencers. Just because someone is a tier 1 KOL doesn't mean that they're the right fit for your brand. The fourth big mistake is jumping straight into tactics. There is a strategic understanding of the brand that you need to have before you decide to flail into different tactics that you want to use for your campaigns. As I mentioned, we think it's really important to understand the audience, product, and market landscape before you do anything tactical, because that will give you the context that is required to decide which tactics you should use. And so you should use that as a guideline before you jump into anything regarding marketing tactics and methodologies. And finally, unclear messaging, the biggest killer. If people do not understand what you do and why they need to care about it in a really succinct way, you're going to lose them. A lot of our clients have previously had very unclear messaging or quite complicated messaging. And so you need to make sure that it's simple and succinct and can be explained in very, very simple terms. There's a little bit of a litmus test that we run, and it looks like this. Does the activity align with our narrative? Does it serve our core audience? Does it drive real usage? And does it elicit an experience that we want associated with our brand? If the answer is yes, then we go forward. And if there's any no's, then we don't. And this can be applied to all of these things here, right? Any sort of tactics or messaging or campaigns you would like to run. So I think it's a nice little litmus test that you can utilize to kind of test whether you're in the right place to actually push a campaign live. So some quick final thoughts on the fundamentals, right? It's you do them right or you pay the price. It's not about building hype. It's about alignment, clarity, and building trust. And so if you're building in this space, you need to nail your positioning, build a real narrative, align your product, user, and the story, and focus on utility-driven adoption. If you keep spouting hype, you're inevitably going to feel the story of Icarus in real time. Fly too close to the sun and you will get burnt. But if you focus on building alignment and clarity and building trust with that audience, then you won't need to shout. Your users will do it for you. If your message is narrow enough and cuts deep enough, then it will reach the users wherever they are. So I think that's it for this video. As ever, if you want help turning your story into a strategy that drives growth, Jello can help you get there. Feel free to reach out in the comments through socials and Telegram, and the links are all in the description. And as ever, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like, comment, and subscribe, share it with your friends, and we'll see you in the next one.